Hey, beautiful star beings. This is Meagan Mermaid with your weekly Starseed message. And if you're new to my work, my name is Meagan Mermaid. Hello, and I'm a galactic guide and channel for galactic consciousness. So, my role is supporting star beings and activating their divine purpose, connecting to their creative genius, and receiving the support that they deserve from their star family. So, I'm so excited to share with you today how to move from disappointment to detachment, because I feel like as a collective, there's a lot of heavy energy. And a lot of this has to do with expectations. And a lot of it has to do with feeling like we're not getting what we want right now. So, a big part of that is number one, not making yourself wrong for whatever emotions are arising in the collective, because there's a lot of intensity right now. It's just like, let's just take a deep breath because I feel the intensity. Hi, Leah. Good to see you. I feel like there's just so much that it's almost like we're just trying to like move through all of this heaviness. And so let's just take a couple deep breaths and center, because this is a really powerful practice that you can do whenever you start to feel overwhelmed, whenever you notice that you're reacting, or whenever you notice that you're in a victim mindset. All you have to do is pause and imagine that white light is being sent down from directly from source consciousness into your crown chakra, and then it moves into your third eye and your throat and your heart and your solar plexus and your sacral chakra and your root chakra, all the way down to your feet. And this white light pours out of you, creating a bubble of white light around you. And this bubble of white light can shift and change into pinks and purples and blues and greens. And you are then surrounded by the rainbow light energy of Sirius. So, just this really quick visualization, imagining the white light and just allowing your crown chakra to stay open as it's safe in this bubble as you breathe is going to bring you back into the present moment. So, let's just take a few deep breaths now that we've activated this bubble of light. So, we'll inhale. And you can exhale with your mouth open or closed, inhaling in. And one more deep breath in. So there's a lot that's happening right now. And this energy of Aries, it's very motivating, but it's also very activating. And so, especially with Saturn being in Pisces right now, we we have more energy that can kind of push us into reactions, and then kind of like from the reaction start to make ourselves wrong or guilt ourselves or shame ourselves, like, I can't believe I got so mad, or I can't believe I said that thing, or why is this happening to me rather than for me, all of this victim stuff. And it's just like coding in a computer, viral programming in a computer. It's the same with our minds and our thoughts. And we're downloading in the collective consciousness all of these viral codes, these codes that create these unhealthy thought patterns that keep us in this space of reactivity. And so, what happens is that all of us are working through some kind of trauma. All of us. If you're a human, you have trauma. And if you're a star seed, it's very likely that you're working through a lot of trauma, because you, as a being that's available, or as a being that has more availability for light to enter, oftentimes that comes through suffering. We expand through suffering. And so when we're starting to reconcile that suffering, we have to understand that our bodies, our physical bodies, are in this very reactionary space. So it's going to be a different trigger for all of us. For me, it's been my daughter. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's your work. Maybe it's whatever is happening in your life. But there's this like little trigger. And when that trigger is pressed, all of a sudden it's just like, and like we react. And so we have to understand that that's coming from a trauma response. It's coming from a space inside of our nervous system that is literally just flooded with chemicals, flooded with all of this, what's the right word? just misprogrammed DNA, misprogrammed DNA. I don't know if misprogrammed is a word, but malfunctioning DNA maybe. But it's basically just like we are programmed to respond, okay? And so, we have to be very, very kind to our bodies because our bodies are literally just reacting to what's been happening in our mental bodies, our thoughts, as well as our astral bodies and our emotions. And so by the time it gets to our physical body and we feel that, like we feel all of those emotions rising up within us, then it's like, we're all going to face those triggers. And we have to figure out when that happens, how do you prevent and how do you repair? Okay, so there's two parts to this. The first preventative is breathing, it's the self care, it's nourishing yourself, making sure that you're connecting with the earth and you're connecting with your body. So, whatever you have to do daily to get into your body, whether it's walking or strength training or, purifying yourself with salt water in the shower or going out in nature and grounding. We've got to connect with our bodies and we've got to connect with Mother Earth. The more that we do this, the more that we're going to be embodied and the less we're going to be impacted by all of the codes that are trying to create misalignment within our collective consciousness right now. And the second part is the repair. So we will get triggered and we will react. And it's up to us to, number one, first be that parent to ourselves and not make ourselves wrong for it. There's all sorts of misinformation out there that tries to tell us that we have to be perfect and that, if we react, then we are bad people. And that's not true. We're humans. Humans react, and we're reacting to a lot of intensity in the collective right now. So when you do react, the first thing that you want to do is you want to come back to your breath and you want to just ask yourself, okay, what do I need in this moment? I'm feeling really upset. I'm feeling really anxious. I'm feeling really stressed. I'm feeling really angry. You got to name the feeling. You've got to honor it. You've got to not make that feeling wrong or not make yourself wrong for it. And then the next thing that you need to do is you need to figure out what the repair is. So, for example, maybe if you got triggered and you yelled at someone or you said something that you wish you hadn't, how can you repair that situation? How can you repair what needs to be repaired? But doing so not from a place of, oh, I'm so guilty, I'm so unworthy, which is really what the dark agendas want us to be in that space. We have to really step into this strength of worthiness. It takes a lot of fucking strength to recognize that we're worthy, that all of us are transmuting for the collective. So, in the gene keys, there's 64 specific energies. Leah sharing amen. Yay. In the gene keys, there's 64 specific energies that you could say 64 archetypes within our collective consciousness. And all of us have a mixture of these. So each of these energies or archetypes has a shadow, a gift, and a acidic frequency, which is like the Christ consciousness frequency. So in essence, all of us have very similar shadows. We not all of us have the same shadows, but all of us have a mixture of the same shadows. And so whatever you think is making you so wrong or so bad, do you know how many millions of people are experiencing and transmuting that same shadow? It's that knowledge and that understanding and that wisdom that we're all transmuting this together that can sort of help to release any guilt that you have when you do react. And so the repair and the preparation is really powerful. But today, I wanted to talk about how to move from disappointment into detachment because a lot of times when we're feeling triggered, we want to cling to something. And we can create in our mind this escape mechanism, right? So maybe it's you're thinking about the future, or maybe you're thinking about a person, or maybe it's a dream that you have. None of these things are wrong. These desires are good. They're important. We need to have desires. But when we're in this space of intensity and when we're in this space where we're more apt to being triggered, it's kind of like we turn to these things as a coping mechanism. And that's when it starts to get unhealthy. And that's what will essentially create more disappointment or just feelings of hopelessness. And the reason for that is because, we want to feel good, right? And when we're in a situation that feels very intense, it's a lot harder to sit with those uncomfortable emotions. So our consciousness will try to start to look outwards and think like, oh, well, maybe I can think about like what it would be like to be with this person or to dive deeper into our relationship or whatever it is. Or once I move, it'll be okay. Or once I accomplish this goal, or I finish this thing, and then we start to take our energy out of the present moment and we put it onto this external thing, this idea, and we start to build this almost like this structure around this external thing or idea or person that like that energy will make us feel better, and that's when we start to get into this entanglement that creates disappointment. Number one, because most of the time things aren't going to happen the way that we think they are. And it doesn't mean we're not going to get the things that we want, but oftentimes it's not a linear thing. We might have to go here and experience this, or get rerouted here or heal this thing first. And so when we're so attached to it looking a certain way, that's what creates the disappointment, because we're not letting spirit or source in to create miracles and blessings and be in flow. So, when you notice that happening, you don't have to make yourself wrong for it. It's human, it's normal to want to feel good, but we've got to be working in harmony with the universe. That means part of feeling good is feeling our uncomfortable emotions, and part of it is also, just really moving through whatever needs to be felt without trying to escape it. And so, if you want to learn more about this month's energy, the words for this month in April were commitment or consistency, commitment, and compassion. And so you can revisit my April energy update if you want to get more insight about all of those words. But we're deep in that. We're deep in that energy right now of having to stay consistent, having to commit, and having to have compassion for ourselves and others as we're on this journey of awakening, because we're all working through these same pitfalls. And it's the more that we can start to name them and the more that we can recognize that we're all going through them, the easier it's going to be. So when we detach from things, it doesn't mean that we can't have them. It just means that we're not attaching our happiness to them. So instead, you can just let go and you can decide, I'm going to be happy now, or I'm going to be present now. Maybe you're not happy, and that's okay. You don't have to be. Some days we're going to feel really amazing, and some days are just going to be a challenge that's just real. But underneath all of that, we can always have this feeling of peace and this feeling of trust. So, detachment is really a trust in the universe that regardless of when something happens or how it will happen, we know that we're taken care of. So, it's really just a perspective of, are you going to live in a universe that loves you and that is always conspiring in your favor? Or do you want to believe that you live in a universe that is scary and is full of separation and full of lack and full of struggle? And so, we really just have to figure out moment by moment, like how our thoughts are creating or contributing to the reality that we want to live in. So, I'm going to be pulling 3 cards from my deck today to sort of help us and give us an idea, more clarity on how do we move from disappointment uh, into detachment, and recognize that detachment is not the same as indifference. Indifference means that like you just don't care, or you don't care enough to change it. And indifference can feel very, very, very painful. Very painful. But But detachment is instead it's this letting go. It's very feminine, the energy of detachment, where it's just like, I know it's coming. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I'm just gonna focus on my self-care. I'm gonna focus on feeling good. Indifference is an energy of lack. It's an energy of thinking like, oh, well, nothing I do is gonna change it anyway, so why should I care? See the difference between these two energies. So all right. From my deck, the Mermaid Empowerment Oracle, which Leah is on live. So I just want to give a big shout out to her because we finally finished the last edits to my guidebook. And now I'm just figuring out the best way to print it. So these decks should be available very, very soon. The guidebook took a long time. It took a long time to channel and to write, but it was all worth it. I can't wait until all of you guys can actually have these in your hands when we do these kinds of transmissions. So, all right, how do we move from disappointment to detachment according to the mermaids? Patience. That's the first energy. The journey. These are good. And self-care. Literally everything I've been talking about. So, all right, the first card that we have is patience, which is the mermaid empowerment is I love myself through the becoming. This is so important because the three pillars of mermaid consciousness are self love, self forgiveness, and self mastery. And so when you start to awaken, the mermaids are your guides on your awakening journey. And through mermaid consciousness, they guide you in how to activate this new self mastery through self love and self forgiveness, all of it. And that takes time. You're not just going to wake up and be like, oh, I'm healed, or oh, I'm conscious, or hi, I'm in 5D, like your new earth or whatever things that are out there right now. It's patience. It's literally moment by moment, thought by thought, word by word, action by action. And so there's so much programming that we're clearing in the collective around self-love and around feeling like our worthiness or our ability to love ourselves is connected to what we've accomplished or what we look like or what we have, all these external things, right? And so in this journey, we're always going to want to become something. That's just part of consciousness. Consciousness is here to expand. So you as a human embodying source consciousness, your job is to expand. But this expansion is always happening. So there's no end point to it. So if you're waiting until you reach a certain goal, or you're waiting until you accomplish something, or you look a certain way, whatever it is that you've been programmed to believe, I need this in order to feel or be loved. That's what we've got to address with this patience aspect, where learning how to love ourselves now, accept ourselves now, and be patient, not only with the process of divine timing, but also just being patient with ourselves, being patient in the fact that, like, we can know, like, we can have the knowledge of, like, oh, this is the right way to act. Or, for example, like gentle parenting, if anybody is a parent out there, there's all sorts of scripts that you can say, right? Like, if your child is having a tantrum, for example, that must feel really blah, blah, blah. And then, it's okay to be upset. It's not okay to kick mommy or, whatever it is. So they have all these beautiful little scripts that you can say. But when you're actually in that situation where your child is like in this moment of like tantrum and all of your stuff is also being brought up to the surface, it's very difficult to navigate those waters. And that's just one example of many where we're being tested all of the time. And when we're tested, it's often when we're swimming in boiling waters. And we've really got to trust that it's just going to be a moment by moment practice where we're going to get it right sometimes. And when we don't, it's kind of like playing a video game where you get to a certain level and maybe your character dies and you got to start over. You'll get back to that lesson at some point. And we've got to stop making ourselves wrong for the learning curve. We've got to stop withholding love for ourselves because of the way that we react, especially when we're in new territory. So, this card, Patience, is saying, I love myself through the becoming. I love myself through the triggers. I love myself through the disappointments. And, going back to this idea of disappointment, sometimes we have an idea of like a certain person or situation, and we feel like it's going to look a certain way or it's going to go a certain way. And that's like, we just had Easter. So the Easter example, when we put our eggs into this basket and it doesn't go the way that we thought, oftentimes it brings up our issues of unworthiness and self-love, of like, oh, well, maybe if I were better, if I were prettier, if I were younger, if I were this, that, what, this, that, and the other, whatever it is, like, then it would have gone a different way. And that's just false. It's false programming. So we've got to love ourselves through the becoming of the learning curve of our disappointments. And even trust that in those disappointments are very powerful lessons. The mermaids teach that there are pearls of wisdom within every situation. So as we start to look for our pearls, we can move through those situations with a lot more grace and a lot less blame for ourselves and others. So the next card that we have, the journey, the mermaid empowerment is, I celebrate every step of the journey. So celebration is the antidote for disappointment or expectation, where we just recognize that right here is where the party is. Right here in this present moment is where the magic is. So we're always going to be going to the next step and the next thing. And it's great to have an idea and a vision of where you want to go moving forward. But the disappointment starts when we start to take our joy out of the present moment because it doesn't look the way that we wanted it to, or it's not working the way that we wanted it to, or we're not getting what we want in this moment. And so when we start to recognize that this moment, this step, this disappointment as something very valuable for us, then we can start to celebrate it. We can start to honor it. That doesn't mean we can't have our uncomfortable feelings. Of course, we're going to have those and we need to feel those. But when we celebrate it, we can start to recognize and be with those emotions, sit with them, breathe through them, and begin to alchemize them and channel them into creative pursuits. That's how we're healing right now. Number one, we're getting into our body. Number two, we're connecting with the earth so that we're sort of allies. There's like all these dark energies or dark entities, agendas, whatever you want to call them, that are, doing their thing, that have this way of how they want things to go. And then we, as these star seeds, are connecting with the earth as allies, and we're offsetting it. We're alchemizing it. And it's not that we even have to fight against anything. We're fighting for our right of freedom and liberation and joy and peace. And so the medicine is basically all of the things that are thrown at us. So we take our pearls and then we alchemize them into beauty. That's what the mermaids teach. So the beauty is from our suffering, from our sadness, from our grief. We create, we bring more beauty into the world. We offer beauty by the connections that we have with others. We show up with beauty. We bring beauty into a world because beauty is an attribute of spirit. And so, in order to do that, self-care is everything. It's everything. And it's so much more than, just getting your nails done or taking a bath. It's a radical way of being, of parenting yourself through every step of the journey. So the mermaid empowerment for self-care is, my self-care is the secret to everything. Because the way that we can have patience for ourselves is through self-care. The way that we can celebrate every step of the journey is through self-care. The way that we can move out of disappointment to detachment is self-care. The way that we can start loving and forgiving ourselves for our projections is self-care. Everything is self-care. We've got to take responsibility, and that's what self-care is. It's taking responsibility for yourself and giving yourself what you need, whether that's a physical need, an emotional need, a mental need, whether it's going out in nature and resetting or breathing, or whether it's crying or writing it out or talking to a friend. You're going to know once you start to communicate with your heart what self-care is, and it's going to look different all of the time. But in order to stop getting so disappointed by creating this external idea of what happiness is, you've got to go within. And the awakening journey is literally just sitting with our emotions. And sometimes it's going to be old memories that surface, and you're like, wow, I thought I healed that, but it's coming up again. And so your self care practice will support you in feeling what needs to be felt, or talking about it, or releasing it. And it's literally just like going into a house and turning on every light in that house. And every time you go into a room, there's going to be a mess, and you're going to have to clear it up. You're going to have to put things away. You're going to have to dust. You're going to have to take responsibility for your mess, your karmic mess. We all have a karmic mess that we're clearing up, and nobody's right or nobody's wrong. It's just where we're at. And it's the only way that we can awaken, and for consciousness to awaken. And so we take that mess and we turn it into beauty, and we turn it into creativity, and we align with the earth, and we raise the vibration of the planet by honoring and acknowledging our individual and our collective karma, and loving ourselves through the process. That's it. It's pretty simple, right? In theory. But, we also just have to recognize that there's a lot of really beautiful things that are happening. And oftentimes, it isn't a linear journey. It feels like we're moving in a direction that's really powerful and really positive, and then we might have a disappointment, or we might have a setback, or we might experience trauma that's coming up to be looked at. And we have to stop seeing that as going backwards. We have to understand that that's all part of the journey. It's all part of the journey. And all the things that you want are still on their way. You're still manifesting your fairy tale life, creating the dreams in your heart. You're still doing that. But you've got to dig your heels in and stay committed and consistent this month, and believe in yourself, believe in your power to create, and stop making yourself wrong for having human emotions and human outbursts and getting upset. That's the thing. The whole idea that we're supposed to be all love and light and never get mad or never get upset, that's another false agenda that's keeping us in separation and keeping us in fear and keeping us in a space of shame, because there's this false idea that's been implanted that other people are doing better than we are, which is not true. It's just not. Maybe in another area someone might have a little less entanglement, but we've all got our own areas that we're focused on. We're all working through these 64 archetypes. We're all healing these 64 shadows, and we're all operating, bringing in these gifts, these 64 gifts, and we're all working towards bringing in these 64 elements of Christ consciousness. And if you want to learn more about that, I really recommend reading the Gene Keys and figuring out what your gene key profile is. You just have to know your birth, time, date, and location. And when you go to genekeys.com, you can pull up your own individual hologenetic profile, and it will tell you what your shadows are and what your gifts are. And it's really powerful information. And I'm currently in the guides program, so I'm going to be able to be offering that as sessions pretty soon. But for now, you can already start doing the work on your own and contemplating on what these different things are for yourself, because it's a representation of our collective DNA. And so that's what we're here to do as starseeds, is heal the collective DNA. Whatever star nation you come from or whatever gifts you have, it's all for this purpose, because that's how awakening works, through our DNA. So remember that we're all going through some sort of struggle, and just be really compassionate for yourself and know that it's okay. And your reactions don't make you a bad person. They just make you human. Welcome to Earth. Things are going to trigger the fuck out of you. So get used to it and start loving yourself. And if you want support, I offer personal sessions, which is really a safe space to start to heal and work through things that are coming up, be it with trauma or things that you just need a safe space where someone can understand and just listen. The power of listening and witnessing is unprecedented. So the link for that is in the bio. You can also book a galactic channeled reading if you want to connect with your star family and start receiving their support on this journey. I also have a self-study course called Galactic Leadership Training that is very powerful, over 6 hours of content for how to thrive as a starseed on Earth. And I also have the replay for activating the compassion portal, which was a really powerful masterclass and activation for this energy of bringing in compassion, which is one of the words, the keywords for April. So I love you all so much. Thank you for being here, either live or on the replay, and have a beautiful, beautiful week.